Shares of embattled developer China Evergrande Group plunged as much as 25% the day after police detained some staff at its wealth management unit on September 16th. It suggests a new round of investigations that could add to the property company's woes. Evergrande, the world's most indebted property developer, is at the center of a crisis in China's real estate sector. It has seen a string of defaults since late 2021 that have rattled global markets and sparked fears of contagion. Trading in the company's stock was suspended for 17 months until August 28, 2023. In August, Evergrande posted a January-June net loss of 33 billion yuan or $4.5 billion, versus a 66.4 billion yuan loss in the same period the previous year. Earlier this month, Evergrande said it had delayed making a decision on offshore debt restructuring from September to October to allow holders of its debt more time to consider its restructuring plan. On September 15th, China's financial regulator approved a joint venture of 5 state-owned companies to establish Seaport Life, which will take over the business and corresponding assets and liabilities of Evergrande Life Insurance. No sooner had Evergrande Life been taken over by the state-owned company than Du Liang and other executives of Evergrande Wealth Unit were arrested. Evergrande Wealth is wholly owned by Evergrande Financial Holding Group Shenzhen Company Limited, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Evergrande Group Limited. On September 16th, a local branch of the Shenzhen Public Security Bureau issued a notice stating that it had taken criminal compulsory measures against Du Liang and other suspected criminals of Evergrande Financial Wealth Management. Immediately after that, on September 17th, Zhu Jialing, vice chairman of Zhongrong Life, was taken away for investigation and is currently out of contact. Zhu used to work for Evergrande Group. There are various theories about his departure. According to some sources, he chose to leave Evergrande because he thought the risk was too high. Around the end of 2021, Zhu took up the position of vice chairman of Zhongrong Life. While at Zhongrong Life, Zhu led a $4 billion mutual investment between Zhongrong Life and Evergrande, which was revealed to be one of the company's riskiest and largest related party transactions. In our view, the occurrence of the criminal investigation indicates the official start of the second wave of meltdown in the real estate sector. Evergrande's debt is 2.4 trillion RMB, so how much does the whole real estate industry owe to the financial system? Some Chinese scholars have done the math. The entire financial sector, including banks, trusts, the issuance of debt and so on, taken together amounts to about 60 trillion yuan or $8.2 trillion in debt, of which 2/3 are personal mortgages. Imagine, that many people are out of work and unable to pay their mortgages. The remaining 1/3 is owed to the public, mainly to real estate companies. With such a huge debt load, real estate companies are running out of options to honor their debts, because no one is buying homes anymore. Real estate companies actually owe a lot of money that is not borrowed from banks, but actually borrowed from the upstream and downstream industry chain, or borrowed from home buyers who have prepaid in advance. It's equivalent to gobbling up their money, so the whole thing is going to explode even bigger in terms of scale. It's projected to be about $12.3 trillion. The economic distress caused by the real estate market has emerged gradually. In addition to China's real estate enterprises caught in the problem of broken capital chains, there are also local debts derived from the real estate market, the so-called grey rhinos, which seriously threaten the financial system. A grey rhino is a highly probable, high-impact threat, something we ought to see coming, like a 2-ton rhinoceros aiming its horn in our direction and preparing to charge. International capital has seen the risk. International rating agency Moody's announced a downgrade of its outlook on China's crisis-hit real estate sector from stable to negative on September 14th. The ratings agency said that despite government support, challenges to economic growth will continue to dampen real estate sales. More than 40 companies in China have defaulted on bonds or missed payments, alarming foreign investors. An analysis by Bloomberg of the latest data from the People's Bank of China found that foreign holdings of Chinese stocks and debt had fallen by about $118 billion, or 17%, by the end of June 2023. The domestic stock market saw a record outflow of $12 billion in August alone. The analysis shows that in the debt market, global investors have disinvested about $26 billion from Chinese government bonds in 2023, while pouring a total of $62 billion into bonds of other emerging countries in Asia. JP Morgan has analyzed that as Chinese government bonds have been included in global government bond indexes since 2019, about half of the inflows, ranging from $250 billion to $300 billion, have been wiped out. China's real estate crisis began when Evergrande faulted 2 years ago. 2 years later, China's largest real estate developer, Country Garden, is also struggling to survive. September 18, 2023 was the final deadline for Country Garden to pay $15 million in interest on its offshore bonds. Earlier this month, it avoided defaulting on its bonds at the last minute on 2 occasions. If Country Garden failed to make the $15 million interest payment by the end of the grace period in mid-October, it'll trigger the principal to become immediately due, and any failure to make the payment would initiate a cross-default clause. In China, provincial and municipal governments, which used to get most of their revenue from selling land to Country Garden and other private developers, are already feeling the pinch from a sharp drop in transactions. It's safe to say now that China's real estate is hopeless. There's not just one Evergrande that's in trouble. Country Garden is now in trouble too, and so is Sunac, China's 4th largest real estate developer. The top players in China's real estate industry are all in trouble. This means that whatever measures the Chinese government has introduced in the past or will introduce in the future will be virtually useless. Other measures taken by the government to ramp up borrowing and spending include the government's cut in interest rates in June and a round of rate cuts imposed on many bank loans. Policymakers in some of China's first-tier cities have introduced ways to make it less difficult to get a mortgage by lowering down payment requirements. The effect of all of these can be described as a drop in the bucket, with minimal impact. The housing prices are still very high in first-tier cities. If they aren't maintained at such high levels, the collapse of China's entire real estate sector will be even worse. Because the houses in Shanghai are too expensive, we don't even have the ability to consider purchasing a home, even if the interest rates are lowered.
Whether the interest rate goes down or there's no interest rate, I still won't think about buying a house because I have no money. If I had this type of money, I would go on vacation, no? For now, I wouldn't want to buy a house. To be honest, no matter what policies come out, you wouldn't reach the point where ordinary people would want to buy a house.
The first people to suffer from the collapse of real estate in China are the common folks. Let's look at this example, which is happening more and more in China. Dozens of home buyers of an unfinished residential complex in Tongchuan, an industrial city in northwestern China's Shanxi province, gathered chanting, "We want our house," with contracts in their hands. They are part of a group of people who had been posting videos of their unfinished homes on social media to draw attention to the situation. And when Reuters visited the city, they gathered to speak about their grievances. One of them is construction worker Shi Dianiu, who bought a pre-sale apartment, not knowing that 8 years later, it would still be an unfinished shell where every night he must climb 20 flights of stairs to sleep in a threadbare room without water, heating, or electricity. I don't have any choice now, living here. There's no water or electricity. When I come back from work at night and climb up the stairs to the 20th floor, I have to use a flashlight. For lighting, as you can see, I use a solar-powered lamp. It's set to automatic, so it turns on at night and turns off during the day. I virtually don't drink water or wash my face up here. I can even say I don't brush my teeth. From May until now, I work on the construction site during the day and come up here to sleep at night. Shi and a dozen other desperate homebuyers live in the block in Tongchuan City as part of a campaign. It's meant to pressure authorities to address so-called rotting or unfinished homes. These homes have become more common during a years-long property slump that has bankrupted many developers and left others massively indebted. There is little sign of reprieve. UBS predicts property sales and construction will stabilize at only 50 to 60% of the peak reached in 2020 to 2021. This is due partly to population decline and slowing urbanization. Shi bought the flat in 2015 for 276,000 yuan or $38,000. 2 years after the developer began construction on the sprawling 12-block site, advertised as a high-end complex with CEO-level service. Since 2015, construction repeatedly stalled, but flats continued to be sold until 2020, residents say. The names of the developer and project changed several times, according to multiple housing contracts seen by Reuters. Buyers have staged numerous protests at the city government since 2018. Tongchuan officials said in 2020 that a committee was established to resolve the issue, buyers said, but construction did not resume. The developer could not be contacted for comments. Tongchuan city government and China's housing ministry did not immediately respond to a request for comments.
They changed the name of the developer and project 5 or 6 times, 8 times even.
Many of Shi's neighbors are retirees who had bought apartments for their unmarried sons, or laborers who cannot afford to rent elsewhere. Inside, solar-powered lamps illuminate bare concrete walls and floors caked with layers of dust and gravel. Residents cook in a first-floor communal kitchen with a single gas burner, and the communal toilet is a makeshift metal shed. In the communal living area, the phrases "strength in numbers" and "live in a new home soon" are scrawled on the windows. A resident and former coal miner surnamed Gao, who paid $33,000 for a flat in 2018. It's been many years since the liberation. The Communist Party has provided us with food and clothing. They ask us to believe in the party and the government. They say they will resolve this issue for us as soon as possible. We've been busy our entire lives. The developer asked us to gather money, but we don't have a stable source of income. We work as security guards and take odd jobs to make ends meet. Since the property debt crisis began in 2021, thousands of homeowners have faced similar situations nationwide as smaller developers face liquidity issues and industry giants like Country Garden narrowly avoided default.
We bought this house. After buying it, my son's wife no longer stayed with him. 3 years of pandemic, my son did nothing, and his wife wanted a divorce. There's no marriage left. And after the divorce, my son also fell seriously ill. For these 3 days, we've survived with just the meager salaries of the 2 of us elderly. I don't want to talk about it anymore. But when we bought the house, the money was borrowed from relatives and friends.
The 73-year-old homebuyer Men Xia added that she borrowed money from friends and relatives to buy the flat for her unmarried son. China has been reforming and opening up for over 30 years, largely on the back of the real estate economy. The real estate developers' own wealth companies and various banks have pumped money into the real estate sector. For example, many of Evergrande's projects are repeatedly mortgaged to the banks. It remortgages with a single property project and pledges it to different banks, including the 4 state-owned Big Four banks, as well as some of the smaller banks such as Mingsheng and China Merchants, a series of banks which it has a good relationship with. Through the repeated collateralization, Evergrande's debt has grown to a terrifying 2.4 trillion renminbi. It's definitely a situation where its debt can rival that of a country. In fact, it's greater than the debt of many countries. Based on China's population of 1.4 billion people, it would take everyone $233 out of their pockets to fill the debt hole of Evergrande. All the banks in China lend primarily to real estate because of the high interest rates they can charge, ranging from 8% to 12%. This has created an equally terrible chain reaction. After so many years of real estate development, it is now like a malignant tumor that has grown to the point that all sorts of problems become evident. It will eventually lead to the collapse of the entire financial system in China. At this point in time, if the government doesn't take action to sever the financial link between real estate and finance, the consequences will be unimaginable. The CCP must first protect its own big banks, those state-owned banks. If it can't protect them, then, when the financial sector collapses next, it will be a fatal one. This point is verified in the latest editorial of Caixin, the most influential economic media in China. The editorial writes that real estate and local financing platforms have become 2 parallel and approaching gray rhinos that seriously threaten the stability of China's financial system. Chinese banks are being squeezed like never before. The problematic loans granted by Chinese banks to real estate developers, as dozens of developers have defaulted on their repayments, coupled with loans granted to local governments and their financial branches involved in the real estate sector, have put the banks under even more pressure. In the face of overall economic sluggishness, China's central bank announced on September 14 that it would allow banks to lower their reserve requirements and begin expanding lending. The move is widely seen as a way to fund the large number of bonds to be issued by local and provincial governments to pay for infrastructure projects. The dilemma for banks is that many companies with weak performance are reluctant to take on more loans. As China's housing market slumps, many households are starting to pay off their mortgages early, and even fewer are buying new homes with new mortgages. Banks have been pressured to buy bonds from heavily indebted provincial and local governments that need to finance large infrastructure projects that will create jobs. A series of government bonds that have been scheduled to be issued in the coming weeks. The central government is also encouraging banks to continue lending to some real estate developers, as domestic real estate companies can no longer borrow from overseas bond markets. In other words, the CCP believes that real estate is no longer viable and it has to let it go. If real estate is uncut and it spills over into finance, then the banking system will be the first to suffer, leading to the complete collapse of the financial system. We have previously reported that Zhongrong Trust, which is a subsidiary of China's largest private asset management company Zhongzhi Group, has already begun to default. The entire trust industry in China serves the same function as the banks. They partly take money out of their own trusts, money that they have managed to raise from their own wealth management companies, and partly take the properties they have built as collateral for loans from the banks. It can be said that the cut approach is a desperate move on the part of the government. The bloodline between the real estate developers and their wealth companies and banks is almost impossible to sever. For example, at least 1.4 trillion of Evergrande's 2.4 trillion renminbi in liabilities is from the banks. So how do you write off this money? The central bank cut 0.25 of base interest rate, which works out to be about 500 billion renminbi liquidity. When it's put against the real estate company's 1 trillion plus bank debts, it's indeed like a drop in the bucket. The Chinese government has printed a lot of money in the past 2 years, but the liquidity is still insufficient, or no money on hand, because real estate has become a black hole. Therefore, in the face of the central bank's cut in interest rates, even the general public in China is not optimistic about the outcome. They have commented, the banks say, I'm not short of money. The people say, I'm short of money, but I don't want to take out a loan. The central bank says, I'm doing my best anyway. It's really sparing no effort to stimulate consumption, but unfortunately, it's not working. There is something wrong with the system. Policy can't fill the hole. So the situation now is, no matter whether the CCP's authorities make arrests or not, it seems that the crisis is definitely going to be a full-blown one, and it's likely that it's going to spread to the financial sector. The real estate industry has a lot of money from the powerful elites, be it Evergrande or Country Garden. Behind almost every big real estate company, there are some government connections to or money from the powerful elites. Similarly, China's trust and wealth management companies have a lot of money from the rich and powerful. So is the financial system, which is mostly controlled by them. If real estate, as well as the financial mines, explode and lead to more problems, what can be expected? The powerful and rich will try to channel this disaster outward so that a huge number of ordinary people will bear the burden. This will surely intensify the conflicts in society. On the other hand, it is likely to trigger very complicated high-level struggles, including Xi Jinping and the central authorities, between the localities and the central authorities, or among the entire princeling party. We expect that the financial crisis derived from the collapse of China's real estate sector will evolve into more social crises. In the end, there is a high probability that it will turn into a political crisis.
Oh my, indeed. The policies of the Communist Party are always correct, always transparent. But here in our new district, it's just heart-wrenching and cruel. It's just unimaginable.
真的就是想不到的事。